The ideas, procedures, and suggestions contained within this podcast are not intended as a substitute for consulting with a medical professional. All matters regarding your health and fitness require medical consultation and supervision. Welcome to the Warrior Wellness Podcast, a podcast for military members, veterans, and first responders focusing on fitness, health, nutrition, and biohacking. Our mission with this podcast is to introduce America's heroes to lifestyle habits and hacks that will help them live healthier, happier lives, and in turn, be fit enough to continue their support of their communities and country.
Well, Dr. Trubeau, thank you so much for being on the Warrior Wellness Podcast. So this is Dr. Wendy Trubeau, and she is the co-author of Dirty Girl. I love the name of the book, by the way.
Me too.
Dirty Girl, Ditch the Toxins, Look Great, and Feel Freaking Amazing. What an amazing title. So she's passionate about helping people eliminate invasive toxins responsible for the chronic conditions that they live with. So we're going to talk all about that. You're going to be probably very surprised that maybe some of these chronic symptoms you might be experiencing maybe because of toxins. So Dr. Trubeau, thank you so much for being on the Warrior Wellness Podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I really hope this is useful and valuable for your listeners.
Oh, absolutely. And so I was just talking to Dr. Trubeau about our prime audience for our podcast here. And I say we, as in veterans, first responders, firefighters, anybody who's deployed, anybody who's, been in the military, we all probably have some pretty significant toxin exposures. And so do you want to just start there with environmental toxins and let's talk about it?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is to everyone who's listening, who's served in any way our country, thank you for serving our country and for keeping it safe and keeping democracy alive. So first off, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your service. And now we can talk about toxins. So there's a lot of ways we get exposed to toxins. So let's do sort of the typical thing, which is, okay, there's toxins that you put in your body. That is typically what you're eating, what you're drinking from, the alcohol we're drinking, smoking. Think of the things that we're deliberately ingesting. So if there's non-organic food, you're getting pesticides, herbicides, insecticides. If you're getting water from single-use plastic water bottles, you're getting the hormone disruptors in the plastic water bottles. If you're cooking on pans that are non-stick, most likely they have PFAS or some variation of it in the pans. You're getting chemicals that way. Then there's the chemicals that you get when you put things on your body. So most women, by the time they settle into their workday, have put anywhere from 150 to 250 chemicals on their body in the form of shampoo, conditioner, hair product, lotion, facial toner, makeup, body lotion, clothing that came from the dry cleaners. It's everywhere. These are typically highly endocrine disrupting hormones. And what that means for you and I is thyroid, mood alterations, menstrual changes. For men, it can mean changes in their testosterone levels. For all of us, it can mean gaining weight around our belly, because a lot of these hormones and toxins live in our fat. They hang out there if we can't get rid of them. So we get extra fat over time. And then the third category of toxins is that other massive category. So there's both tangible, like your air quality, your water quality. If you live near a processing plant, a golf course, a highway, or a farm, you're getting exposed to toxins from what's being sprayed or produced. I was just reading about the Superfund sites down in, I think it's Texas, that people have forgotten about because it's 45 years old and the whole generations have changed. So people don't realize they're living near toxic waste sites. This is also where you look at the furniture that you have, the bedding that you have, your bed, it could have flame retardants in it. And then layered on top of that, for anyone who's served, if you've served in another country and there's exposure to any type of explosives or chemical warfare or toxins that are being sprayed, or even think about it, gunpowder, bullets have lead in them. So you're getting exposed to lead if you're big in guns. We went out west and we were shooting guns. I was like, oh, I'm going to hell. I'm getting a lead exposure here. I'm gonna have to go do detox. So thinking of broadly, especially in the military, you're getting exposed to living on a submarine or being in a place where the air quality isn't as good. These are massive drivers for health. And then one more layer that I think is particularly impactful for the military is the toxins that happen from trauma, because it's not really talked about, but the trauma that we all experience, especially if you've had difficult experiences in the military, do make changes in your DNA and do make changes in your cells and do make changes in your body's response. And that can also impact your ability to stay in balance and detox and be healthy because of what you experience. So experiences absolutely layer onto and can be a type of toxin unto themselves.
Right. And this is so timely because just a few months ago, the PACT Act was passed, and that was to provide disability coverage for those service members who were overseas who were exposed to burn pits, because before they were not recognized as something that has caused very significant chronic health conditions, if not death, for, hundreds of thousands of service members who have served overseas. And I remember, friends of mine who was deployed telling me about these burn pits and just the stench and the smoke and they were constantly exposed to these things. And I'm like, gosh, that can't be healthy. And finally, they are recognizing that now as a contributor to these medical conditions and or death, and are approving it as a condition of a military disability now. So this is very timely to talk about this. And also with firefighters, a lot of people forget about them because of the chemicals that they're exposed to, even just training. And my brother-in-law is a firefighter. And he actually ended up with testicular cancer at the age of 28. Super young. They caught it in time, so he's good. He's cancer free. But this is apparently not a very uncommon for firefighters at very young ages to come up with these cancers that are pretty rare to get that young, because of these chemicals that they're exposed to constantly fighting fires. They use chemicals. It's not just water that they're fighting these fires with.
Yeah, there was actually a massive expose that the chemicals they're using to fight fires with are actually PFAS. And so PFAS is an endocrine disruptor, and it's a forever chemical, meaning it doesn't really degrade, it just hangs out. And so the more you're exposed, the more exposure you have. That sounds kind of simplistic, but really the more you're around it and the more you interact with it, the higher likely the levels are to be. And these are potentially very deadly for people. And they then get into the water supply, which has become a whole other issue that the municipalities are now about to deal with, which is to screen for, remove, and test for the PFAS levels in our water supply. So yeah, it's pretty scary when you think about it. When you think about people who served in right after 9/11 in the epicenter of New York, people who were in New York do experience a significantly lower quality of air, did experience it, and have consequences that stem from these sort of non-subtle, but you can kind of forget about. Oh yeah, buildings came down. All the chemicals in the buildings were released as dust. So it's pretty horrifying.
Yeah. And so probably what most people don't really realize is how closely connected these toxin exposures. Like, we've all seen the movies and heard about the things about the cancers, right? Like that's all we know, right? Or, asbestos, right? But what about kind of the everyday, Jane and Joe, or the, and Private Snuffy who served, overseas a couple of times, he may not have cancer, or we may not have cancer, but we might have other symptoms of chronic health that we might think is related to something else, or don't really know, or maybe we're just suffering with and are just like, well, this is just my health is shitty in these areas, but it could be very much linked to these toxin exposures. Can you talk about those links?
Yeah, it's pretty horrifying, honestly, because a lot of the things that we associate with just normal aging, like cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, like pre-diabetes, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, degenerative diseases, autoimmune diseases, like, well, I have celiac, but things like Hashimoto's or rheumatoid arthritis or ankylosing spondylitis or multiple sclerosis, more of a degenerative disease, cancer, degenerative diseases like Parkinson's, and then Alzheimer's and dementia. We don't necessarily think of these as being related to our toxic exposure, but they 100% are. Because when you think about what's causing all of these issues, the root cause of them is inflammation, and toxins are extremely inflammatory. And so what happens is if you get exposed and you can't process it and you can't store it, or even if you do store it, it creates inflammation at the cell level, at the cellular level. And so it continues to essentially start the flywheel for dysfunction. So I'm an autoimmune person. I go down the autoimmune path. You might be a diabetes person and your profile is more like, well, my blood sugar is kind of abnormal, or I can't lose weight. That's the most common thing that people say who have toxins. I can't lose weight because toxins are stored in your fat, and your body will not lose your fat until it loses the toxins. So depending on what your vulnerability is, you're going to develop an issue that you might just be thinking, well, this is just what happens when I age. And my response is, no, this is what happens when you get toxic exposures and you can't deal with them properly.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and I guess the important thing is to just acknowledge that no matter who you are, even if you aren't a military service member or firefighter, you have definitely been exposed to toxins.
Yes.
Your
totally.
entire life since day one, right? So let's just assume you have that toxic burden. Everybody does.
Yes. Yeah, if you're living on this earth, and even if you're not living on this earth, I think about the people who are in space. They're getting toxins too, because all of that equipment off gases constantly. Think they live their days in like a PVC suit. PVC, endocrine disrupting. So yes, if you live on this earth, you're getting exposed, because think about it. I'm sitting on my vegan leather chair, right? No cow was harmed in the making of this chair, except it's plastic. Vegan leather is plastic. So I'm sitting on plastic in my non-cotton dress.
Right.
With my plastic microphone and my plastic keyboard and mouse, sitting in front of the lights that are giving off variations in EMF. Like, there's really no way to get around it. So we are exposed. The question is, what can we control? And then how much can we control not filling up our cup with toxins? And how much can we control removing those toxins from our cup? Kind of think of it like an hourglass, right? We want to decrease that filling and increase the excretion.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Okay. So let's just start there. I mean, what are some practical tips for people to kind of lower their toxin load on a daily basis?
We want the least popular one first.
I would imagine, I wonder what that would be. Maybe EMFs, because
Nope.
I definitely get a lot of resistance when I talk to my clients about that.
Nope.
Lights?
Nope. Think like more common daily usage for most humans. I'll give you a hint. Exposure significantly increased during the pandemic.
I mean, I don't know, your phone?
Nope.
What is it?
It's alcohol.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Now everyone's like, okay, click, I'm done listening to this.
Turn it off.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's have a little scenario. If I said to you, Stephanie, I have a glass of toxins for you. Look, it's going to shut down your detox. I understand that. It's going to cause leaky gut. Fine. We can make a few exceptions. Maybe it won't cause it for you. It's going to stress your adrenals. And it's really generally going to make you feel, well, you're not going to be in your right mind. And then you're going to feel cruddy tomorrow. Would you like 2 glasses or 3?
Exactly.
You'd be like, this chick is nuts. She's
Right.
nuts. But if I advertised alcohol like that, you would be like, she's crazy. Who would drink that, right? But when you're drinking alcohol, it shuts down your detox because it's such an acute toxin that you can't deal with anything else. It's really like life or death to deal with the alcohol. So you're going to shunt all other detox to the side. And especially for vets who have been exposed to any type of chemical warfare, burn pits, or some other major exposure, you need all the help you can get. You cannot afford to shut your detox down. So it shuts down your detox. It causes leaky gut. What that means is that, you know, if you kind of think about it, your mouth to your anus is a tube, and it's inside your body, but technically it's outside your body. So you only absorb what you're supposed to absorb. But when you drink alcohol, you open up the gut. So your outside world and your inside world are now communicating. And that inevitably leads to basically some type of autoimmune disease or chronic dysfunction, because it causes another state of inflammation and challenge for the body. And then the adrenals are responsible for whether you live or die, and whether you do detox or you sleep or not sleep. So if you have dysfunction in the adrenals, it's going to turn off your detox, in addition to the liver being like, whoa, I can't deal with anything except the alcohol. So at a very easy level, drinking less or eliminating alcohol is 100% in your favor. Not to mention it's free to drink less, right? So, but it's never popular. I have a patient, I saw her yesterday, and I said to her, I talk about you on podcasts, because she was drinking 2 to 3 glasses of wine every night, and she loves her wine. And I'm like, I don't blame you. And for a woman who's small, we don't process alcohol the same way that men do. And that's literally too much alcohol for a human, for especially a female human. And she recently said, I cut it down, and you know, I kind of miss the experience, but I also feel good. And so cutting down alcohol, whatever you can do, is better than not doing anything.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah. So take from that, like, hey, instead of 3 drinks, have 2 drinks, or 2 drinks, have 1 drink. Cut it down as much as you can.
Yeah.
And then another pretty easy way, I don't know that alcohol is an easy way. It's an impactful way, but it may not be easy for people because it's so much part of our culture. But another potentially easy way is to, anytime you are eating something, try to eat something that is organic or minimally processed, or looks like what it started as in life, and hasn't really been tortured too much into another form or shape, doesn't have artificial colors or flavors. Try to avoid those. Those are toxic unto themselves, so try to avoid those. And don't drink from single-use plastic water bottles, because, you know, I don't know, I have all these kids, and I think about the universe and what will it be like in 50 to 100 years, and those never degrade. So unless we want our descendants to be living on a pile of plastic, we really want to eliminate those things to the best of our abilities now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are really, I mean, yeah, I know the alcohol, I get it too with my clients. It's like, there's a lot of resistance there for the kind of the emotional dependence on it, and all the things. But yeah, those are really practical tips. And I know a lot of people probably are thinking, well, you know, what about okay, so that's exposure, right? That's daily. Those are kind of 3 kind of low-hanging fruits that I can work on.
Yeah.
But what about the toxins that I've already been exposed to and that are kind of stored in my fat? Like, what do I do about those?
Yeah, this is a great question, Stephanie. Before I get to that, there are a few more low-hanging fruits that people can get to.
Yeah.
So one really low-hanging fruit is that, because so much of our exposure around endocrine disruptors, which remember are stored in the fat, so much of that comes from the things we put on our bodies. So a really easy way to impact our exposure and stop filling up the cup is, as you run out of some product. Okay, so you don't have to look at everything you put on your body. You just have to look at what's running low, and what you're cleaning your house with, and what you're washing your clothes with, and what you're washing your dishes with. Look at those things as you start to run out of them, and do what I call level up. A lot of people call it level up. Level up. Look on Environmental Working Group for a clean version. Maybe what you have is clean and you scored. Great, keep doing it. But if you didn't pick a high quality item because it was cheap, it was easy, it was in front of you, were in a rush, whatever, that's an opportunity to level up, whatever you're running out on. because
Yeah.
over the course of a year, you're going to level up on a ton of things, and you're going to reduce your exposure. It's very hard to talk about removing it until you stop filling the pump up with it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the next would be filter your air and filter your water to the highest level that you can based on your budget. And what I mean by that is you might not be able to do, let me back the other way. If you can do only a countertop filter, make it the highest quality countertop filter that you can get. If you can get a point of use filter, make it the highest quality. And if you can get a whole house, great. You might even want to do both a whole house and a point of use, depending on what the water shows in your area. Environmental Working Group, which I referenced before, has collected in one area on their site all of the water testing in the country. So it's United States, but it'll give you your zip code. You can look to see, well, how's the water quality? You don't even have to test it. You can just look to see what's tested and what is showing and what do you need to filter out. And then for air filter, same thing. Room or whole house. I recommend filtering your car if you get a new car, because of all the chemicals, and the new car smell is 300 chemicals. So filter your car. Okay, so those are the things. Don't fill up your pump, right? And then we talk about, okay, you have this stuff stored in your fat. We all have it, right? That 5 pounds. I've had a bunch of kids, and I'm like, all right, well, where my abdomen expanded, there's a roll that's like persnickety to get rid of. And so when you look at removing toxins, first you have to not fill up the pump, so the system's not so challenged. And then you can go in sort of levels. I'm a huge fan of test, don't guess, because you can target your removal based on what you have, but you have to know what you have. So I do recommend that people work typically with a functional medicine provider. It's very hard for most standard mainstream doctors to do this testing. They just don't have the tools. So it would be like asking your electrician to do your plumbing, right? It's the wrong specialty. So typically you're going to need a functional medicine provider to do this testing. And if you go to them, there's two things. It shouldn't usually be the first thing you test, because you want to make sure that your adrenals, your gut, your food sensitivities, your daily life, are you sleeping? Are you moving your body? Are you pooping regularly? Have we taken care of the foundation of your health? And only then can we get to toxins. And then you want to make sure they're comfortable with toxins. Okay, so you test, you figure out what's going on, and then you're going to want to make sure you sleep. Most of us need more sleep than we're getting. Kind of a badge of honor, right? Like, especially if you're a SEAL, right? I spent a week and I didn't sleep. Well, that's really not good for you. Those guys are not detoxing when they're in Hell Week. They are they are surviving, and you can't do both. You can't survive and thrive in the same sentence. You either survive or you thrive. So once you've gotten out of survival, you really want to make sure you sleep enough. It's really pretty cool. When you sleep, the cells in your body shrink. So that means the interstitial space, the space in between your cells, gets bigger. And that means you can actually drain toxins out of your cells, out of the interstitial space, into the lymphatic system, where it will then be excreted. It's really cool. Just by sleeping, you can detox more. A. B, move your body and get sweaty. Do you know how many women sit in my office and they go, I don't sweat anymore, doc? And I'm like, it's not a badge of honor. I want you to be sweaty and stinky, because yes, it's painful to do your hair, but you know what? You need to sweat so that you can get rid of your toxins. Just as your skin's going to absorb toxins, it'll get rid of them for you too. So get sweaty, make sure you shower afterwards so you get it off your body. And then things like Epsom salt soaks, saunas, hyperbaric oxygen, all of these, pretty much you can't, well, if you stay in the sauna too long, you can harm yourself. But if you do it once a day for 30 minutes and you make sure you get enough liquid, you're not going to harm yourself, right? And so looking at things that you can do to remove the toxins is very impactful. There's tons of binders, but I don't usually recommend a specific binder, because we want to know, what are we treating? Right? So if you have mycotoxins, which are the toxins mold puts out when it's in your body, we're going to treat that with one group. If you have heavy metals, that's another. If you have herbicides, pesticides, Agent Orange, we're going to be treating that entirely differently. So each one has its own sort of treatment path. But again, the most impactful things you could do don't put toxins in your body. So level up your food, minimize your alcohol, move your body, sleep, manage your stress, manage your trauma. Those 6 things are super impactful and can help to sort of relaunch the detox system. You know, 'cause if it was shut down, you're going to launch it.
Yeah. No, and that's a really good point though, that you made was, you know, you don't want to detox a body that is sick,
No.
right? Because you're exposing your body again, because when those toxins are released and you're trying to get them out of your body, if you have a sick body, you're being re-exposed. So not only were you exposed the first time you were exposed, now you're being re-exposed because it's trying to get processed out. So if you're very ill and you're not taking care of yourself, then that would be, you know, terribly, you know, dangerous for you to do, is to go ahead and do like, and that's why I hate those like juice cleanses that people do, or those fastings, you know, like these extreme measures that people do to just like try and lose weight for my, you know, my 30th high school reunion. You know, it's like you do these like marathon juice cleanses, and I'm like, oh my God, the toxin load. It's
Yes. So
horrific.
this is such a good point, Stephanie. So you want to think of those things like a reset, a juice cleanse, a prolonged fast, a 24 to 48 hour water fast. I've done a 5-day fast with fiber that's supposed to bind the toxins that you release. It's pretty cool, actually. I learned that even though I got really hungry, I never got hungrier than really hungry. I always thought that it would escalate, you know, and that by the end of 5 days, I would be so much hungrier. But I wasn't any hungrier on the end of day 5 than I was on day 1. Very interesting experience, like sort of gave me some control over food. Like, oh, I have control over this. I have agency here. But really, like, they're a good reset if you're feeling like you're addicted to sugar, you're addicted to alcohol, you're addicted to processed foods, and you just need a reset. It's a really good opportunity to take a break, but it's not a detox, it's a reset. It's retraining you. It's retraining your taste buds. It's shrinking your stomach a little so that you're not overeating. But yeah, you can't do a 3-day juice cleanse and then sandwich it with abuse your body, 3-day juice cleanse, abuse your body.
Right.
It's not going to work.
Exactly.
Totally
Right.
not going to do it.
So this is about like you're suggesting kind of, I love the steps, the practical steps. That's how I did it. That's how I detoxed our household was. So, I mean, like 10 years ago, I was like, okay, and when I run out of something, we're just switching to the clean, you know, the EWG. I got the EWG app on my phone, you know, and we're only using those things. Right. So that's what I did. And it probably took a couple years where we, you know, completely switched out. And even like your point of cleaning up your diet, but also, and then getting sweaty and getting the detox, you know, but don't go into the shower and then put toxic soap all over your body, right? And then use toxic cosmetics, right? And then toxic perfume. You know, it's like you just re-exposed yourself after you did all this work to get it out of your body. You're just putting more right back in.
Yep. I mean, I only see women in my practice, and the common recurring theme is, hey, I can't lose weight. And my response is always like, if you've dealt with your adrenals and you know, most people, we're sort of primed to think about eat less, move more, which some people need to eat less and move more, right? Like sometimes you really do, but if you're eating less and you're moving more, or you're eating less garbage and more high quality, and you're moving the way your body needs, and your weight is not where you want it, you have a toxins issue. And I'll tell you, Steph, it's really interesting. About like 2-3 months ago, I gained 6 pounds, like practically overnight. Like, what on earth is going on here? Like, I'm pretty like, here's what I eat, here's how I do it, here's how I exercise. The only thing that changed was I had taken on driving my son's carpool because we had a babysitter doing it and she left. And so then I was doing it. The only thing that was different was that 3 days a week, I was getting up like an hour and a half earlier to drive his carpool, but it was impactful enough. And my body did not like it, you know, so it can be really subtle. It took me a while to figure it out. I was like, oh, that's the only thing that's different. And so what we think might be a problem and what our body thinks is a problem don't always match up. So it's like you can't have judgment and evaluation over, well, it shouldn't be a problem. Well, it is, right? Like it just is. You have to honor what your body needs. And I think that's another thing not to step over is if you're doing everything right and you can't lose weight, it's a toxins issue. And you have to honor what your body needs. And it's not about what, I have all these people who compare themselves to others. Like, well, so-and-so can deal with that. I call them strong like bull. Anything you throw at them, they're totally fine. I'm strong like mouse. Throw something at me and I'll gain 5 pounds and be a quivering puddle on the floor. So I have a very quick response to decompensate. And you have to honor that. It's just your body.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, and pretending like this isn't an issue is not going to make it go away.
No, ma'am.
Right.
No.
This is just the way our world is. This is the world we live in. We're exposed to hundreds of toxins each and every single day, no matter how, careful you are, no matter if you live out in the middle of nowhere, you probably still are exposed to some toxins, most
Well,
of
a
the
lot
time.
of people who live out in the middle of nowhere are living in farmland.
There you go. Yeah.
Have tremendous exposure to herbicides, pesticides, and insecticides. I mean, glyphosate is the most commonly used herbicide in the world. Its use looks like it's doubling every 7 years or so. And guess what? It's patented as an antibiotic. Antibiotics kill bacteria. So if you kill the bacteria and it shockingly, I don't know about shockingly, it only kills the good bacteria. It doesn't kill the bad bacteria. They don't have this pathway. It's called the Shikimate pathway. The bad bacteria don't have that pathway. It's only the good guys. So now you killed off the good guys in your gut and the bad guys are doing a little dance because they get to multiply. They're not being inhibited. And the good guys are like, stop killing me, please. But it also kills the bees. It kills the insects in the soil, which impacts the food for the birds, which changes the entire ecosystem. So a ripple becomes a wave in the impact that it has. So if you're living in a remote area, you may be not being exposed to the highway, but you're being exposed to the chemicals in the farming and the industrial areas.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is a big deal. I mean, my husband, when I ask him to get like some sort of like, hey, get organic asparagus, for dinner. And he's like, oh, does it have to be organic? I'm like, yes, it does. And if it's not, don't get it. I'm not eating it. And so he's basically just learned at this point, if it's not organic, then he's not getting it because I will refuse to eat it.
This is such a great point to talk about, Stephanie. We had a complete fiasco last year. My husband took on the shopping. I have 4 kids and we have a babysitter who lives with us and my in-laws are local. So, typical dinners at our house feed 9 to 10 people. Like that's like a normal night. Because I also have teenagers and they're like, oh, could so-and-so come for dinner? I'm like, of course, what's one more for the amount of food that we're making? So my husband does the shopping. This is really this was a failed experiment. So he took on the shopping. I made the list. He executed it. And he comes home and I'm unpacking and I'm like, what's with the not organic berries? He's like, well, have you looked at the price of the organic berries? And I was like, yeah, dude, every week when I buy them, thank you very much. But what I said to him is, we're in a place that we're fortunate enough that we can afford organic berries. And if you feel like we can't afford the organic berries, like you said, don't buy it. But we're either going to pay for the organic berries and vote with our feet and signal to the industry that this is important to us, or we're going to end up paying ourselves to detox ourselves. And actually, when COVID hit, instead of going on a big family trip we planned, we finished our basement and put in a sauna.
Oh, nice.
We were like, well, we're not going anywhere, so we'll put a sauna in. Oh, hi, kitty.
We have a visitor.
So you're going to pay it somewhere, right? If you're strong like bull, it might take you longer to catch up when your body starts to protest. If you're strong like a mouse, like me, you get 3 exposures and you're a hot quivering mess. So how quickly you respond depends on how sort of on the edge your system is. And you're on the edge if you have cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disease, metabolic disease, cancer, degenerative disease, Parkinson's, dementia, if you can't lose weight, or obesity. If you have any of those 8 things, you're teetering. You really want to be careful and pull off your exposures because those are the things that kill you. The toxins kill you indirectly by creating these issues. We don't think of it as toxins. We think of it like, oh, I'm just getting old. Everyone in my family has diabetes. I'm like, well, you all eat, think, move, and live in similar ways. So of course you all have the same issue because you have the same genetics. So you're prone to do the same things. But you're right. The husband doing the shopping thing was really for us, it was a total failed experiment. And we were like, okay, well, I'll just take that back on as a task.
Right. Well, and you're right. And we are so fortunate now. I mean, you're seeing even like in Costco, Costco, it sells more and more organic and grass fed, and, they're, seem to be kind of shifting to the demand that of people who are looking for things like this more and more. And, with ordering online, and I mean, it's so convenient nowadays. There really isn't an excuse. And then, the argument of, okay, well, affordability, those things are a little bit more expensive. You can buy things in bulk, and do things like, I mean, I have frozen berries, organic berries, so they last forever, they're not going bad in my refrigerator. So you can be smart, about these things. And then of course, referring to the EWG, so kind of the what is it, the dirty
dozen,
the dirty dozen
15.
and the clean 15. So maybe just those things, just avoid the dirty dozen and focus on the clean 15. What are some other tips that are just kind of practical when it comes to just, being reasonable? Maybe you're limited on a budget to kind of to save, yourself, but still kind of do things like this, that you do have access.
Yeah, you referenced a lot of things. The online purchasing, there are some subscriptions you can join that will send you ugly fruit. Technically, ugly fruit gets discriminated against. It doesn't get purchased because it's ugly, but it's still organic, and it still has a higher nutrient value than the non-organic, and it doesn't have the pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides in it. So you can sign up for ugly fruit, ugly vegetable deliveries that are at a fraction, because nobody wants to buy the ugly food. So that's one. And then looking for local farmers who are doing organic food, because local means you haven't trucked it across the country. And now that comes with its own set of gasoline fumes and off-gassing, and it's picked before its peak ripeness. So looking for some type of local farm. We have a local CSA that actually starts today. I'm going to go pick up my first farm share, and it goes for 20 weeks. And it's not certified organic, but it is organic. They just haven't gone for the certification. So that's another thing, to just have a conversation with your farmer. Like, what do you spray? When do you spray? How much do you spray? What do you like? How do you determine it? And are you organic in practice? So that's a possibility. It doesn't have to be certified. It has to be really the practicality of it. And then don't dry clean your clothes. That'll save you a ton of money, right? Because the chemicals that they use to dry clean your clothes is formaldehyde. So I was super excited because I passed this cleaner and it said, clean dry cleaning. So I called them. I was like, hey, what do you use? Like, what are you using to dry clean the clothes that's so clean? So he tells me the name of the chemical. Okay, right here, we know that like it's a chemical, but I go look it up. It's just a variation in formaldehyde. And from being super excited, I was like, oh, I've been snookered, right? It just hasn't been studied the way formaldehyde is what they put in you to preserve you when you die. You don't want to put that on you, so don't dry clean your clothes, because those are right up against your body. So you're absorbing them. Don't, if you can, quit smoking, because again, there's like,
and vaping.
Well, the vaping, it depends what you're vaping. So the nicotine itself can be toxic for people, but the vaping should have fewer chemicals than the cigarette does. The cigarette has more chemicals. And then if you're going to do marijuana, you want to do tinctures, because they're pure. When you smoke this, anytime you're smoking, you're getting the same chemicals that are going to make you sick, that increase your risk of cancer. So don't smoke it, tincture it. So try to get off nicotine, minimize your alcohol, don't dry clean your clothes. If you're going to do construction, if you're doing construction and you're painting, get no VOC paint, so that it doesn't continue to off gas and be the gift that keeps on giving in terms of toxic exposure. Because that's what you got in the service, right? Live on a submarine, get toxic exposure. There was no focus on anything that we're talking about. And so you just got repeated exposure. So try to minimize any DIY projects, especially in a house built before 1978, because it has lead paint. So anytime you cut into the wall, I mean, the house as it settles is releasing some sort of small lead particles that you breathe and absorb and eat, but try not to deliberately increase your exposure by cutting into the walls.
Yeah. No, those are all fantastic tips. So any last words or tips for our listeners, Dr. Trubeau?
You can call, I should have told you earlier, you should just call me Doc. It's like easier,
Yes.
right? Call me
Doc.
So
yes, I was telling her that in the military, everybody who's medical, even if you're not a doctor, is called Doc.
Yeah, you can totally call me Doc. I'll answer
Yes.
Doc. So yeah, I think it can feel somewhat intimidating when you're starting the beginning of this journey to think about, oh wow, like it's really everywhere. And so you're never going to be done, quote unquote. This is an evolution of you from where you are now, and you're going to start the process. And if you're human, you're going to screw it up, and it's okay. Just stay in the game. Don't leave the game because it's intimidating, especially because it has far-flung impacts on your ability to stay healthy and get healthy, especially if you've had any type of burn pit chemical exposure, Agent Orange, or any other type of major chemical exposure from being in the service. Don't give up, right? You can regain function. Okay, especially things like, if like, oh, I'm on diabetes and I'm on insulin. Well, we can fix that.
Yeah.
Not type 1, but type 2 we can fix.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. There is hope. The body heals.
Yes. Don't give up. Don't give up. That's the message. Don't give up. You've got this.
Awesome. So they can probably learn about all sorts of different detox approaches in your book, Dirty Girl, Ditch the Toxins, Look Great, and Feel Freaking Amazing. I can't wait to read that book. That sounds so much fun. I love it.
It's fun read. Yeah. Definitely read. It's a roadmap, right? It's meant to walk you through how are the ways that you can start to level up and feel freaking amazing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Doc, for being on the Warrior Wellness Podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Hey guys, thanks so much again for joining us on another episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. Please make sure to subscribe, follow, like, all that good stuff on your favorite podcast platform and on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and leave us a review while you're there. So let us know what we're doing great, what you'd like to hear more about. And please go ahead and just give us a follow and give us a honest review, especially on iTunes, because that helps us reach other military members, veterans, and first responders with this vitally important information about how to improve their health, fitness, and wellness. We will see you at the next episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. I am your podcast host, former Army Captain Stephanie Lincoln, founder of Fire Team Whiskey.